and I do hope that everything is fine as far as the whole weekend is concerned or was concerned. What have I got in today's program? I did say so a week or so ago that the 15th of September 2020 was World Democracy Day. But what does World Democracy Day means for Africa? As the statement is, does it really mean anything in Africa? Now, with different interpretation of democracy throughout the world, is it time in Africa that we have a type of democracy as we had before the coming in of Western civilization? Yes, we had leaders who foresaw our peace on the continent. But why has this input failed in almost all African states? That's the question my guests today are going to try and answer. Because we are in the 21st century, but things are not going the way they should really be going. Now, with me in the studio is Femi Oke, who is not new to this studio, who's the director of the Nigerian Institute. Welcome to the program.
Thank you very much. Thanks to be here.
Mike was here a couple of weeks ago as well. Mike Kasibo, look at me, trying not to get the name right. Mike Kasibo, Sheffield, Berkeley, Tantoho, Paris, Council, Milton Keyes. You know, as politician go, he's probably one of the best at the moment here in UK.
Thank you.
Here in UK. Welcome to the program. Now, it's a disturbing question, and I'm sure you've been aware, you've seen. I'm not talking to people who don't know the African politics. If I talk about African politics, we all know what is going on in Africa. Nigeria and Uganda, Kenya, Tanzania, it's just a name that changes, but the rest is the same. The structure of politics is the same. Now, we are looking at our past. Can we recreate our past to go ahead properly in the future? As the words say that if you don't know your past, you probably don't know where you're going. Now, we have come to such an extent that we're saying if one Nigerian man said that if politicians in Africa were a breed of a dog or a donkey or a horse, the Western world would have discontinued that breed from breeding anymore if the politicians could be got rid of in that sort of way, but they can't, because they're human beings. Now, what should we do? Can we recreate our past, go back to where the chiefs and kings used to rule, because then we never had the problems that we have? Or should we just let the flow continue in the 21st century and, who wants to start on this? What can we do? Any ideas?
Yeah, no problem. I'm happy to start.
Okay.
Thanks so much for having me.
Okay.
As you said, my name is Mike, and it's Shenley and Tatno, Parish Council that I'm from.
Yeah.
So your question is very wide. In a political kind of term, it's at large. It's such a big question. But there will be so many ways of
going on about
your question. I think we still have the opportunity to go back to the basics. And I think with the situation of Africa, personally, I think it's best to go back to the basics than to continue the way we are continuing, because we're going to knock so many walls, and we're going to end up, really in a bad way, that Africa is taking over, like what's happening right now. I received a video this morning. A Chinese guy is being crowned king in Ghana. Right?
We talked about that, by the way, a week ago.
And this is where Africa is heading to. Before the invasion, before the scramble for and the partition of Africa, Africa had what we call the values. Everyone loved Africa for the tradition, for the values that we had. For it takes a community to raise a child.
Exactly.
Well, you know what's happening in Africa right now?
No.
It's the kind of Western way of life that people have taken up, thinking it's the best way. Black people, in fact, for me, when I saw your question, the theme, it's not just Africa, but is there democracy? This is how I would phrase it. Is there democracy for black people? Because when you look at black people in America, black people in Europe, black people in Africa, we are having the same problem. the value, the love for each other. Our values have gone. All we are doing is copying. We are copycats. We've forgotten who we are.
Yeah, but when you mention America, and you mention Britain, and you mention other countries, the structure of the democracy here would have educated us to make sure that what we copy what's happening here in the Western world.
No.
I think, to me, because here we don't have a choice. Femi, what do you
we
think?
do.
Huh?
Yeah, I mean, going back to the original precept of your question, it's quite simple to try and put Africa into one basket.
Okay.
I mean,
okay.
and I think that's the misconception that cannot hold. Someone said to me the other day that, like for example in Nigeria, that they want to be separatists, that Nigeria is a country that was cobbled together, it's not real, it's a contraption, and all this kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And I said to them, actually, if you look at the world as a whole, go to Latin America, go to Asia, most of these countries are all contraptions, whether it was Brazil, whether it's Peru,
Colombia,
other countries in Asia, they're all contraptions.
Yeah.
So if everybody wanted to go back to their basic ethnic entities, can you imagine how many nations there would be in the world? If every country that's an ethnic entity, each one of them became a country, balkanized like a Yugoslavia, it's not going to be practical.
It won't work.
It's just not practical. So the idea that we need to go back to some notion of fantasticness is just not right. And if you think about even the history of nations, like if you go back to Europe, we go back to some Asian countries, we had series of wars between nations and ethnicities. One will dominate the other, and that's why you get empires. You got the Songhai Empire, the Zulu Empire, the Zimbabwe Empire, the Mali Empire, and so on. So you would have to have centuries of wars before so you get rise and fall of nations. The colonialists came in and cut that short. So now we need to ask ourselves that if countries like Brazil can be sustained,
and big as it is,
a multiplicity of ethnicities there as well. Indigenous peoples and Europeans, and black people. So and they're making it happen. There's really no reason why we cannot do the same in Africa. But then it's about what is the form of that democracy. And that democracy is dependent on each nation. Each nation has to be different.
I do understand what you're trying to say. But the biggest problem that exists at the moment is that when we look at what is going on the continent, what might change if nothing is changing, if it's going to be the same. Because 60 years, for example, Nigeria has had its independence. Nothing is happening. Nothing has changed in Nigeria. Hang on. Nothing has changed in Nigeria. The same kind of thing. Then Uganda is coming up to nearly 50. Congo. If I look at all the countries, the structure is the same. Nothing is really changing.
I'd agree.
Very little is changing. Very little is changing in terms of leadership. But that's what I'm looking at more. In terms of leadership, very little is changing. So when it comes to say, okay, why would this question come up if things were okay? Because if this question wouldn't really come up if the roads are there, the hospitals are there, all these things are going on properly. But because those in leadership have messed up.
So democracy, leadership, development, they're all separate questions. They're not all in tandem, and it's all going to work.
Starts from the top. If you get the top wrong,
not necessarily. You can have democracy, and you can have bad development. You can have no democracy, like in China, and you can bring millions, tens of millions, not hundreds of millions out of poverty. And look at the high-speed rail and everything that they've got.
But that's a type of democracy in China. It's what I'm trying to say. What can we fall? Cuba, for example, they will tell you that they also have democracy. So it's a system of government.
So it depends. So then you now get into defining what is democracy, isn't it? So that's why I said one shoe doesn't fit all. And different kinds of democracy will suit different countries, even within Africa. So we can't have a system. the Western democracy, for example, is going to be the panacea to all our problems. It's not necessarily the case. And then you've got provocateurs who are instigating and stoking conflict within our nations, to want to balkanize nations so that they don't survive because they've got ulterior motives. There's a lot going on. There's a lot going on. We can't just look at it on the surface. You might say that the leaders are inept in themselves, but then there are other foreign powers that have vested interests that also, it suits them for Africa to be destabilized, for it not to be together, we got African Union, we've got single African market now. There's a lot of progress that is actually happening under the currents. But we are so looking at the finality and expecting perfection that we don't see those little increments of positivity and to latch onto them. We're always talking about the negatives. That's the problem with Africa. And so if we concentrate on negatives, we're going to be blindsided on all the positives.
Because there are issues that we need to focus on and we need to see, which are probably keeping us the way we are. Issues, for example, like tribes and religion. Because I may believe with what you're saying, that we are with the same party. We've seen this in Uganda, we've seen this in Nigeria, where the Muslims are saying one thing, and the Christians are saying another thing. If a person who's on top there is not a Christian, then the chances are that, it happened in the 60s in Uganda, where a prime minister lost his seat because of his religion, because of his affiliation to the Catholic religion. And the next thing we know, the other man. So these are all part of the package. I'm trying to find out, what sort of package can we have which won't include tribalism, which won't include religion, and all the other things? What kind of package can that be? Because this is the 21st century. These guys are going to the moon. They're thinking of Mars and back, and putting a man on Mars or something, and we are still struggling. I hope you guys understand what I'm trying to say. There has to be some kind of, this kind of formula might work. What do you think, Mike?
Yeah, as I said, Africa has got to the basics. With Africa, you can't compare Africa to any other country.
Okay.
What Africa went through, first of all, people say slavery took long time ago. Colonialism was long time ago. But actually, those
wounds are still deep.
The wounds are still bleeding for Africa.
Okay.
The mindsets of Africans.
Yeah, that's the right word.
Is the typical evidence of colonialism and slavery. So for us to say that, to compare Africa to any other country in the world or state or continent, is unfair. Because what the black people went through, what black people are still going through, is you can't compare it to any other country in the world, to any other race in the world. So Africans need to step back from the speed that we are going. We are comparing ourselves to other countries, and that have already taken off, that didn't go through the experience that we've gone through. We need to step back and re-evaluate self-awareness. Who are we as black people? You find so many black young people. Have you ever seen a Chinese young man or a Japanese young man holding a knife, killing each other?
I'm sure they do. They have triads. They have
it's not as black young people that you can see on the street. And this is where we are going wrong. The problems of black people are totally different. And this is why, for me, I said that to phrase it like African democracy, it's the black people democracy. Everywhere, the problems that people are going in experiencing in Africa are the same problem black people are experiencing in America, the same problem black people are experiencing here. Representation, for example. Where are we represented? Where are the views of the community, for example, represented? In Africa, do presidents understand the word community? Is there any word welfare system when we're talking about democracy? Where is democracy when young Africans are running away from their own countries, risking their lives in the sea to die to get to Europe? Where is democracy? When young Africans, as they try to cross to the sea, they're enslaved in Libya. You find so many Africans enslaving fellow Africans. Where is democracy? And when we say Africa, is it the same experience, the same democracy when you look at the northern part of Africa?
Okay.
For them, they see themselves as no Africans because their color is lighter than the real Africans.
Okay. No, but
do you see that?
This is the thing is, I love looking at solutions. Solutions, because we've done enough of complaints. We've done enough of we know the problem. We know the problem. I was talking to some Nigerian recently where I was trying to get Nnamdi Kanu, and I said, look, I've been listening to what Kanu is saying, but he's not talking about the problem. He's not talking about the solution, and that's, to me, that's why I've seen it so many times with the other leaders and so on. Bring in a solution, and then we start thinking, okay, you've got a point. Like, for example, the company, the organization you guys started, of African and Caribbean.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
So
yeah. That is part of the solution. You see my point?
Yes, I see the point.
Yeah. So
the
solutions.
The way I would say is that, and you mentioned in Nnamdi Kanu, is that not just the IPOB, but many organizations in Africa in general, whether it's Uganda, Nigeria, Zimbabwe, whatever, are so interested in fracturizing, cutting, breaking away, separating. That the unit, the country is not united. So the best solution is us to break up.
Yeah, to break up. Yeah.
And whereas breaking up creates another problem, like you just said. So breaking up in itself is not a solution, because it just creates another problem. And then when you do break up, I will pose to you that in those separate entities, if it were to happen, they'll have the same problems that they're having now. So there's no solution. The actual solution is to verge on with what you have now, and then the young people, the young intelligentsia needs to now take charge and not be ignorant and not say, it's not,
it won't work,
we can't do it because we don't have the money, we can't do it because we haven't the godfathers, they're not going to allow us to do it. You've got to remember that during the colonial times, when we were fighting for our independence, those who fought for our independence, whether it's Kenyatta or Nyeri or all that, they were much young, in their 30s and so on. So they fought for the independence. So where are the 30-year-olds now and the 40-year-olds now? What are they doing? Because there's so much poverty, they're more interested in putting food in their mouth than to be engaging in politics, because politics is a dirty game, and it's been controlled by the thugs and the top. But another thing is that democracy is for the people of the people, and then you have a situation where democracy in Africa is largely the people and the government are disengaged. They're really not engaged. And democracy comes with freedoms and responsibilities.
Exactly.
But Africans are quite happy to cry out about the freedoms. We want freedom of association, freedom of speech, freedom to decide if I want to secede and all that kind of stuff. But when it comes to, okay, you need to pay taxes. They don't want to pay taxes. You see what I'm saying? So they don't want to pay taxes. You need to follow the law. You want to follow the law. They don't want to follow the law. They want to go backhand. They want to give someone some money to to speed up their application and all this kind of stuff. Some backhander stuff. So they don't want to follow rules and regulations. They don't want to pay taxes. But then they expect government to work. And then they say, oh, why should we pay taxes
when the government is not working?
And the government's not working. The government will now say, how can we work if we don't have the funds? So it becomes a chicken and egg scenario. Which comes first, the chicken or the egg? The fact of the matter is, whether you go to the beginning of time, whether it's the Romans, whether it's whichever empire or whatever, you always have taxes. Okay, even in our countries, the so-called back in the times of the pharaohs, there were taxes.
All the
different empires in Africa,
people used to pay taxes.
They had royalties and whatever. So
Yeah.
when people begin to understand that, for you to have a stake in your governance,
you need to pay.
You need to be putting something in. If your community is in a mess, what are you as a person doing
on an individual level?
I mean, before I close up, what I found is that when I was in South Africa, for example, and people look at South Africa and see it as a shining example of what Africa could be and the most developed country or whatever. But when you're driving through from the townships, I mean from the cities then through to the townships and so on, you now wonder that you can identify that this is a black area. Because all the roads are dirty, everything is just disorganized. And why is that? Because like Mike said, the lack of community spirit. Rather than them take it upon themselves as a community to cleanse their place, they're saying it's government's responsibility
to do that.
Meanwhile, they're not giving government money to pay them to be able to fix up their community. And then they within the community are not doing it. So it becomes no one's responsibility, not my job. It's not Elizabeth's job.
It's a governmental job, yeah.
So this is the problem. So that's part of the main problem of our democracies and our governance and our lack of development. That's some of the problems that we need to face up to.
Okay.
And until people start telling themselves the real truth and stop blaming other people, they should take some responsibility themselves.
Okay.
I agree. I agree with Comrade Femi what he's just said. Let's start from the issue of taxes, for example. In Uganda, when you read the news every annual year, you find that billions and billions are unaccounted for. These are taxi payers' money.
Yeah, of course.
It's unaccounted for. Now, you tell me what incentive is that you're telling the country that we've lost such and such billions unaccounted for.
Yeah.
These are taxpayers, listening to your news. That billions and billions are unaccounted for. And you are expecting these people
to go and pay taxes.
To pay taxes. You're expecting people to pay taxes without hospitals. They can't go in the hospital and find medicine in the hospital.
They lose the interest to pay.
They've got no free education that used to be there, like what we're talking about.
Years ago.
There's no infrastructure. There's no word community. Back in the days, we used to have what we call elders. Elders had a lot of say, a lot of confidence in terms of those community things. Our road is not working. Elders will just drum and, people responding immediately.
And in Buganda, we had what they call Bulungi.
Exactly.
Where people would go, they're not paid.
Exactly.
They just go and clean the streets and look after the street and clean everywhere and everything. They're not paid. But because they're doing it on a level.
This is where I'm coming from. This is where my point. My point is that it's not the input, it's the output that we're looking at in terms of determining democracy, more especially in Africa and for black people. A friend of mine called me the other day. We're talking about democracy. We're talking about Black Lives Matter. And this guy is not an African, is not a black guy. And he was telling me that, the truth is that for black people to be respected, Africa has to do something about it. It has to come right the way from Africa. You see black people in America? You see black people in Europe? For us to have respect, it has to come from way back in Africa. Africa is a big continent. Africa is a respectable continent. But unfortunately, Africa has lost it all. And until Africa goes back to the basics, and we look at where did we go wrong as Africans, where is our humanity? Where is our love, the love for our people? Where is it? Where did we go wrong? Love for our people vis-a-vis money, wanting to have this quick deal with the Chinese. And you don't care about who your people, what are going to be tomorrow. What are the outcomes of that the following day or the following year? We've lost everything. And this is where, we are at the tipping point right now in Africa. So African leaders have to do something. But one of my solutions here is that the people who are going to change Africa, and I've always said this, are the Africans who lived in the West. They've lived back in Africa. They know what we call, when we talk about democracy, they know the life, when we talk about welfare system, for example, community. These are basic things, but they're very important. The provision for elderly people, provision for young people, provision of infrastructure, things like hospital. These are key things. And when these people go back to Africa, and I mean people like, you've been in the police, for example, you spent time in the police looking around and talking about community engagement. You know what that means. You've been in social services. You know what welfare system is all about. When you go back to Africa, it's going to be different. This is not adopting the Western democracy, but it's about looking at the basic life necessities for people of Africa. And this is where we've gone wrong. We don't care about our people. So many young people who are very energetic, who are very talented, have left Africa. They're dying in the ocean. African leaders have to step up. It's very important.
Mike, I agree with you 100%. The difference is the people who hold power will always want to hold on to power. Such a structure, when you come with it on paper, it's workable. But when it comes to reality, it's a different ball game. I was speaking to a guy from Tunisia, and he was asking me, said, look, we had the Arab Spring. The Arab Spring happened. The government in Tunisia went. Egypt had change of government. Several of these Arab countries, the Arab Spring went up. Now, the African Spring, we thought that it could come to Sudan as it happened in Sudan. The man went without the army taking. The army had to step in only because things went bad. Mugabe went, the army had to step in, but that was a political issue. But the African Spring, in a sense that political, what is called civil disobedience, if that was the key, it will teach the leaders that, listen, I think we haven't been listening. But how do we start that civil disobedience?
So we are moving more and more into democracy in Africa. I mean, if we go back 10 years, the number of countries that are actual democracies, you may question the integrity of the kind of democracies.
Yeah.
But the number of democracies are far more now, and it's more prevalent now. And if you look at West Africa, I think you had Gambia's situation where the guy wanted to stay in place. He took the rest of ECOWAS to come.
To go and get him. I remember that.
There was also another island, Guinea-Bissau. I
think Guinea.
You've got the situation now in Mali where the guy, they were not able to solve their problems.
Mali at the moment,
there was a military coup, but then the people in ECOWAS are saying, you can't be part of ECOWAS
if
you put in a civilian. So civilian democracy is coming into the fore. And, we're still at the teething stage. Nigeria, for example, has had democracy for 20 years. So 20 years in the life of a nation is just a drop in the ocean. So if we're expecting Uhuru tomorrow, I mean, I think we're just... We're really kidding ourselves. So, but within that 20 years, look at Ghana and their democracy. Do you understand? But now it seems to be kind of a step backwards with what's happening in Mali, what's happening in Ivory Coast, with Ouattara wants to go in for a third term.
And Cameroon as well.
And then so then you talk about African Spring. So what happened in Mali is likely to go and happen in Ivory Coast. What beats me, so it's not democracy in of itself that's the problem. It is our selfish, what I call the stinkingly selfish and corrupt politicians. They are the problem. It's not the people. Because you go to any country in Africa, by and large, you can go to a village or whatever, the common man is not necessarily corrupt. Not necessarily.
Of course
in fact,
not,
they're quite welcoming. Most people say, if you go there, they're going to kidnap you, they're going to do it. Actually, they're actually quite welcome foreigners. And like you were saying, people from the diaspora coming back home, you can be welcomed. But what I'm saying is those in the powers of leadership, we need a complete change, a 360 change in terms of the people that are there. To me, I say that they are the failed generation.
Of course.
So the people that were there in the 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s, it's time for them to vacate. Do you understand? They've done their bit, we thank them, and now it's time for them to bow down gracefully and allow... No, it's true.
I know.
Others will say that, the younger ones are going to be worse. That may well be the case, but we need to push on the mantle to the new generation. One, the new generation has the benefit of technology. Technology is moving at a fast pace all over the world, and Africans are keen into it. So, and also there is this thing about the Chinese. I'm not anti-Chinese. I'm quite pro-Chinese.
I knew you were going to say something about that.
The reason why I say that is that in any country or any continent that needs to develop, let's go back in history. How did America develop? How did Latin America develop? They developed with the money and the funding from Europe. And where did that money from Europe come from? From the slavery and the colonization of Africa. So without that, America wouldn't be where they are today.
I know.
Latin America wouldn't be where they are today. Now, are they now investing in Africa? How many European countries are ready to build up Africa? We talk about reparations. If you think about the damage that all these countries have done to Africa, they should be ready to say, as a result of that, we think that we want to have come in, instead of just giving aid. Aid doesn't work. You understand? We want to help you guys build the infrastructure that we denied your country through slavery and all the rest of it. Why are they not doing it? Because they're too selfish and concerned about their own economies and the stock market and all that kind of stuff. They're not interested in us. The Chinese, because they have an interest in raw materials and all the rest of it, any businessman is not going to give you something for nothing.
Of course.
So we should be expecting the Chinese, on what basis should we be expecting handouts from the Chinese? They have no reason to be giving us any kind of handout.
Okay.
Now, they're ready to help develop in terms of building railways and all this kind of stuff. It's down to our leaders in our countries to set the right parameters. If you build a railway to nowhere, okay, because you think you just need Chinese money and you can't pay it back, that's your problem. You should have decided that you make sure that whatever they're investing is going to be able to pay for itself. And in any case, for me personally, I have nothing wrong in saying if the Chinese built it, let them control it and let them make their money. Because after all, it's going to create jobs for how many people? Are they going to be Chinese? No, they're not. They're going to be the locals. Those businesses are going to pay taxes. Are they going to be paying them to China? No, they're going to be paying them to the local country. So sometimes we need to look at this thing really in a more dynamic way. And I don't color it in a kind of ethnic, kind of racist kind of tone, which people use to deride the Chinese or deride whoever it is. You need to be constructive in the way your engagement, understand, and also look at it properly, but take advantage of it. Because the West are not going to do it for you. The West are telling you not to go to the Chinese because, and they're not coming in to
do anything about it. I do agree.
Tell you don't use Huawei, but they're not bringing anything else.
The former Liberian president, the lady who was president of Liberia, Mrs. Johnson, Mrs. Johnson, she said, if Africa could allow more women to be in positions of responsibility,
I agree.
Then the chances are she became a woman, she went in, she solved so many problems that she felt men had failed to solve. And she kept on saying, look, we need more women in positions of power. So that at the end of the day, because women are mothers, they are seeing what is going on. There is that heart of saying, look, I will think up, we need to do this because we are women. Now, Rwanda has taken that on board and is doing its level best as far as that's concerned. To a certain extent, Uganda and even South Africa, the current president, Cyril Ramaphosa, is trying to bring more women into the ANC, into the fort. Although there is a challenge, he's being challenged by his own ANC party. Now, do we have room now where we can say, I think some women are ready, even though are ready to move forward, but our cultures have ways in which they hold us back. Because we look at women and say, hang on a minute, they're supposed to kneel before us. The traditional, they're supposed to be doing this, you know. And I remember even our king, the king in Buganda, where I come from, one time a question was being asked that, should we have a prime minister? Because the king always has a prime minister. We have a prime minister who happens to be a woman. And he didn't, his response wasn't, because the question caught him by maybe off guard. He didn't really expect it. But maybe in years to come, yes, there could be. But women are ready. They are doctors, they're engineers, they're lawyers. Can we bring them in a way?
Definitely, women are raising up in Africa.
Because Sudan, this peace negotiation that took place less than a month or so ago, the top people who were top negotiators, because one of the Sudanese fellows was here, a former Sudanese minister was talking to me on my show, on this show, and he said, look, we had 2 women who were actually leading the negotiation in Sudan. And
but we also women leading the demonstration in Sudan. We saw women die for that cause. But I just wanted to go back to 2 points actually from what Femi said. I think the problem of Africa, the issue of democracy is kind of a two-way. The population, the civilians and those in political power, is a two-way. Everyone holds a responsibility. Now, here's a situation, for example, in Uganda. The opposition tells the president that, you know, you've done this, you've done that, and when we come to power, we're going to take you to Hague. Now, you tell me if this guy is going to give you power when you're promising to take him to Hague. All you're doing, instead of saying, look, this guy's been in power for over 30 years. If I were the opposition, I would say, look, you've done a lot for this country. And I'll guarantee you security. Sit back and advise us. Let us take over. Everyone does, you know, we've all gone wrong at some point. point where Africa will get to and hand over power peacefully and the president sits on the other side and just be over to advise is what the point we are looking for. And this is when we'll start saying there's democracy in Africa. Because the president can, without any kind of guilt or, will say, I'm stepping down for somebody else to take over. The young people in the country will say, yeah, we've got jobs. We're happy. We're going to education. After my degree, I'll get something. I'll be able to sustain myself. Rather than thinking about going to the West to make it, I can make it from home. I'm proud of where I come from. I'm proud of my continent, Africa. I'm proud of being black. I'm proud of being African. To me, that's what I would call democracy.
Yeah.
The other point about the Chinese, and this is very important that we exhaust these points because we have the evidence in Uganda. During colonialism, there was that treaty that was signed for River Nile. River Nile is taken as to be from the West. No, actually, that River Nile is from Egypt, but River Nile is from Uganda. But this is a situation where, because of the low bargaining power when it comes to Africans, the Chinese are invading right now. They are taking over. They are signing treaties. These are going to take up to 100 years for generations and generations to come. I don't agree with that. I don't agree with the Chinese. I would call it an invasion. A Chinese being carried out by the black people in this 21st century, and you tell me you don't want to go into the racial issue with the Chinese going to Africa. A Chinese that is been killing Africans in China, not even 10 years ago, but about 4 months ago, a black person in China has been thrown out of a hotel. Even they can't even go to the shop, and you're treating these Chinese in Africa like kings when they can't see you as a human being. When a black, hold on, let me finish. When a black person, somebody can kneel on their neck, they say, I can't breathe. And you tell me I'm not going to talk about the issue of race?
What I'm suggesting to you, just like you just mentioned the knee that happened to
Floyd.
So then what happened to Floyd? Does that mean that all Americans are bad? No, it doesn't.
Of course not,
What has happened in the UK, does that mean all British people are bad? No. So that's why I would say you can't use that to brush every Chinese person. So if a particular community decide to make someone a king, that's down to that community. I mean, that sounds crazy to me. It's unlikely to happen in a place like Nigeria. But I mean, every country, every ethnicity, every person within their locality can do as they please. If they want to have him as, that's up to them. It's not for us to judge. I don't know what great things he did in that community that made them to hold him up. But moving further on, I mean, I'd rather say that, as you said, the women and our young folk need to take over power, especially in Africa. And I think most of them are resting on their oars, taking it easy, and allowing the old men to continue to take over. But as I say, there are good things happening in Africa, because if you go to Congo, they had a democratic election. You may question the authenticity or the veracity of the election, but they've shifted over government from the government that was there to somebody else. Okay?
Tanzania, the same thing.
Many countries in Africa,
Namibia, South Africa.
There are a few cases, the Bongos, the guys in Cameroon, the guys in Togo, Ouattara that wants to continue. What's happening in Egypt, like you mentioned, the Arab Spring. So it's like a false dawn. So it's like we expect something to happen and it didn't happen. Nigeria's had a change of government now from one party to another party. Same thing happened in Ghana. It happens all the time now. So, and we've had a most recent thing that happened in Nigeria, which is the Edo elections. Which I think is a taster for what's going to be happening in the rest of Africa, is that we had a situation where we had an incumbent, and the battle was about godfatherism, because there's always the big man who's there, who wants to show his power. Okay, and then you had another guy who said, no, we're not going to have that. And then the people spoke, and the people spoke against the godfather. Do you understand? So what I'm trying to say is that the people are awake now. Do you understand? And if the governments can allow the democracy to have free reign, you understand? That means not allowed to be rigged, allow the elections to be fair, the people will speak. And then over time, we will correct our mistakes, because as Mike said, mistakes will inevitably happen. And I think we should allow these elder people to bow out gracefully. We shouldn't be saying to them that, so we're going to string you up on corruption charges, we're going to do this, we're going to do that. Pinochet in Chile, he left eventually, and he escaped any kind of prosecution in the end. But he created so much atrocities. But Chile has democracy now. So we need to look forward and say, look, we don't want to keep cracking the nut with a sledgehammer. Let them move out, but then we must be prepared. That's the young folk must be prepared to take over. Because there's nothing, if you're not prepared, you're not doing any activism, you're not doing any community help, you're not doing any grassroots politics. Because if there's parties and you're not involved, you don't register in the party, you don't take up, because if, like I said, if there's a multitude of young people and a multitude of women, if they coalesce together, they can take over these parties, but they choose not to.
But Femi, who does the preparation? I thought was the top leader. You need to prepare. You need to prepare young people who are going to come up, set them into the... For example, in this country, you find so many political parties encouraging young people right from the grassroots, from primary schools, into debates, into allowing them to be...
It happens in Africa.
It happens in Africa,
for sure.
But you find that when a leader realizes that, we have a situation in Uganda where I've seen so many young people who've stood up to speak out. They've been killed, broad daylight. They've been, gunned down in the cold blood. Is that really helping in Africa? We've had situations in Nigeria where we've seen all these things, and so. I agree and I see what you say, but on the other hand, I'm saying it's the responsibility of the leaders. It's the power that our elders had before, that is a parish or an elder in the community, in raising up, in modeling, in imparting those real values that we had in Africa. They are gone. And that's because the power within those people is being taken out by the governments. We had decentralization, for example, system back in Uganda, but now you go even to the entire district, the services at the district level, everything they have to beg for. The teachers will take years without getting the salary.
Mike, part of what I've always looked out for is the problems are too many. They're there. In fact, we could spend another 5-6 hours discussing the problem. But somewhere along the way, we need to find, say, that there is a common ground. There's certain things we believe in as Africans. We said, this thing, okay, it will take a while, but we'll get it in the end. We had Idi Amin in Uganda. We knew he wasn't going to survive another 10-15 years. We
but knew. He did it so well in Uganda.
But we knew.
That's also so
we've had problems left and right. But at the end of the day, why the West is so developed is that it finds solutions. Look at how they're struggling to get the vaccine. Hang on. Yeah. They're even now, they're saying, let's sit together and see how we can get this vaccine on the way. But try and get the Africans to sit together and come up with a solution of its kind. You're going to have a big problem even getting them to sit together. You run an organization, you know this. That Caribbean and how many Africans you get to come around?
Femi, can I just okay, so that what you're saying is very true. One of the biggest problem in Africa is religion, money, and obviously tribes. Those are the key problems in Africa. And one of the solutions that, for me, I've spent about 7 years working in the community, trying to understand the dynamics within, more especially the African or black communities.
Okay.
And 2 years ago, we've decided to come together with the the Caribbean community. And so because of, we're talking about issues of black people. When you see a black young man lying on the street, it doesn't discriminate whether it's African or Caribbean.
It's black.
One will say is a black young man. So why not come together? Because the problems we have are one, are the same. There's power in numbers. Let's come together. Let's get the little resources that we can get and put them together. And that's what we've done. So we've formed up what we've called African and Caribbean Arts and Heritage Union. A union that is going to bring Africans and Caribbeans together because we have the same problem. And then we're going to start looking at what are the issues in the Caribbean side and what are the issues in Africa. We are basing in the UK, for example, looking at the issues, working with embassies and different organizations, both in the diaspora and in Africa, looking at things like African Diaspora Fund, for example, Development Fund. We get so many Africans who die here, and sometimes we have to look for money here and there to repatriate them back home. But if we look at things like how can we put funds together before even anything happens, when things happen back home, disaster, we don't have to wait for the West. And this is where Africa is going wrong, because you will have to wait for the West to come in and supply us with water, with food.
Listen,
so the solution, we have a solution to the problems of Africa if given time.
We have
the solution, yes.
The problems of Africa.
Yeah, we have the solution.
Okay, Femi, we are coming towards the end of the program, but before we do, I've got one or two people who have actually been making comments here that I have to say. Stephen Tafo, who says it's great. Mike is on point. Mike has a point. Great voice, understanding the problem helps to plan the solution. That's what I was saying. And of course, Robert Griffey, who just says, great to hear from you, Mike. Well, it's what to do with Mike at the moment with the solutions. But I'm looking at what if the solution is going back to look at the things on the ground, because everything starts from the ground. When soldiers are going up front and suddenly they realize that they can't go further ahead,
you go back to the drawing board.
You go back to the drawing board and plan afresh, and then come back with say, look, we couldn't go in. Something's wrong. Let's plan again and start again. Now that is where Africa is at the moment. Can we go back to the drawing? If we're going back to the drawing board, where do we begin from? Can we really do A, B, C, D? Can we do Z, F, X, and so on? That's the kind of solution that I'm looking
the basics,
for.
And I've said that before, that the solution lies within. It's not without. And it has to start from the grassroots. So if these young people and the women and whoever wants to have a vested interest in their country don't take charge of it themselves. So we need a kind of renaissance, if you like. So if you think back in the 50s, the 40s, when young Africans who were abroad, like he said, the Nkrumahs and whatever, the Zeeks, they were abroad. They were abroad, and they developed structures. They galvanized themselves into political bodies. We need a re-enginizing of that. So they need to create grassroots support, grassroots organizations within themselves. So start at your local community, 2 or 3, that's what I was saying, do community things in your local community, graduate to your region or your state or whatever, and eventually, so what you need to do is you need to learn the mistakes from people before. So when you're building your foundation, you've got to do it in such a way that you have to be in the system as well.
Of course,
and out of the system. So you cannot take over the system from outside.
Exactly. That's
so
what
you have to be in
Mike as
and out. So you have to be a partaker. You have to get involved in the elections. You understand?
If you're allowed to do so.
You are allowed to. The thing is, you see, when there's a critical mass of people, then they cannot ignore them. Do you understand? But when they're just the odd one or whatever, if they kill him off, no one cares.
It's true.
You understand? But if you kill that one and there's someone else to take his
about
place,
20 or 40
to take his place, to carry on the battle,
he won't kill all the 20s.
And the mistake that a lot of our leaders are doing now is that they're not creating room for succession. We talked about the elders and whatever. If you look about traditionally, we had a culture of how we bring, when the king dies, there's a way in which someone else comes in, and then continuity is almost seamless. But now, as I say, because of our stinkingly corrupt, selfish politicians, they don't want to think about who's going to come after
the next president.
Because they almost think that they're going to live forever. So that is the issue. So they need to have succession.
Sorry,
But Steve, I just want to say one thing.
We've run out of time. Yeah.
We've blamed the leaders of Africa, but I want to ask the West to give Africa space.
Yeah.
Because although we blame corruption on Africa, the Western side is drawing. I think they have the biggest part to blame on the problems of Africa.
You heard about the banks
Exactly.
taking the money and corruption. All
Exactly.
these banks.
The most corrupt Western side
I think
has to give Africa space. Let us realize who we are.
No, the issue of
and
the
solve
bank,
our own problems.
well, the issue of the bank, even if Africa had the opportunity to do what the West is doing, Africa would have even done it worse. It would have taken money from the West and would have kept the money.
It's the West that is corrupting Africa.
No.
It's the West that is corrupting Africa.
They're corrupting when you're already corrupt.
Their own problems without that corruption.
Where's the money going?
It's coming here.
Femi, I just want to say thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you
for coming in. I know we could be here for another 10 hours before, but we probably won't agree to adjourn. It's been wonderful, and I just have to say that in a week or two, we'll have the Nigerian program, and I'm sure Femi is going to come back and talk something about Nigerian independence and Nigeria at 60 and see there is quite a lot that needs to be started. There is the Biafra thing, and there's a young man who is trying to do some stuff. So anyway, we'll
focus on Nigeria.
we'll look at the future of Nigeria, the past, and whether the present and the future will still affect it as we go along. Thank you very much for viewing us, and I do hope that we'll be together again in a week's time also for another edition